Windsor, Berkshire, October 31st, 2010. Children laugh in costume, candles flicker in carved pumpkins. But inside one home, a woman braces for something far darker than Halloween. Joanna Simpson's home in Windsor, Berkshire was the kind of place that looked like safety. A well-kept garden, warm brickwork, and the laughter of two young children echoing through the halls. But behind the curtains, the air was thick with dread. Joanna, 46, was a mother, a friend, and a woman trying to rebuild her life. Her marriage to Robert Brown, a British Airways pilot, had collapsed under the weight of emotional abuse, control, and fear. Brown was meticulous, calculating, and increasingly unstable. Their divorce was bitter, dragging through the courts with venomous exchanges and custody battles. Joanna had confided in friends, "I don't feel safe." But the system saw no immediate threat. Brown, meanwhile, was unraveling. His career masked a man who couldn't tolerate losing control. The divorce wasn't just a legal process. It was, to him, a humiliation. And humiliation, in his mind, demanded retribution. Joanna tried to shield her children from the tension. She kept routines intact, smiled through the pain, and leaned on her close-knit circle of friends. But the fracture was widening, and Halloween was approaching. Robert Brown was a man who lived by precision. As a British Airways pilot, he was trained to control variables, anticipate turbulence, and maintain composure under pressure. But outside the cockpit, his life was spiraling into chaos. The divorce from Joanna had fractured more than just a marriage. It had shattered his identity. Friends described him as increasingly erratic, withdrawn, and bitter. He couldn't accept that Joanna had moved on, emotionally and socially. She had begun to reclaim her independence, reconnect with friends, and build a life without him. Brown saw this not as healing, but as betrayal. He began to isolate himself. His conversations grew darker. He told one colleague, "She's trying to destroy me." He started researching legal loopholes, obsessing over custody arrangements, and venting about the court system. But beneath the surface, something more sinister was brewing. Brown had begun to plan. He purchased a claw hammer, not for home repairs, not for utility, but for something else, something final. He studied maps of Windsor Great Park, identifying secluded areas. He dug a grave days before Halloween. He packed plastic sheeting, gloves, and duct tape. Every move was calculated, every step rehearsed. Joanna had no idea. She was focused on her children, on Halloween costumes, on carving pumpkins and keeping the night joyful. She had no reason to suspect that her estranged husband, though emotionally volatile, would cross the line into violence. But Brown wasn't just angry, he was methodical. And Halloween night was approaching. October 31st, 2010. The streets of Windsor were alive with children in costumes, laughter echoing through the crisp autumn air. Inside Joanna Simpson's home, the mood was quieter. Her two children were in the playroom, absorbed in games and sweets. Joanna was alone in the living room, tidying up, unaware that her estranged husband was minutes away, with a claw hammer in his hand. Robert Brown didn't knock. He had a key. He entered the house with the calm of a man who had rehearsed every step. In his mind, this wasn't chaos, it was order, retribution, control. Joanna turned to face him. There was no argument, no shouting, just a flash of movement. And then the first blow. The claw hammer struck her skull with brutal force. She staggered. Brown didn't stop. He hit her again and again, 14 times in total. The forensic report would later describe the injuries as catastrophic blunt force trauma. Joanna died within seconds. The children didn't hear. Brown had chosen his moment carefully. He wrapped Joanna's body in plastic sheeting, dragged it to the garage, and loaded it into the trunk of his car. Blood pooled on the floor. He cleaned quickly, methodically. He wore gloves. He left almost nothing behind. Then he drove. Windsor Great Park is vast, over 5,000 acres of woodland, trails, and royal history. Brown knew it well. He had chosen a spot days earlier, secluded and quiet. He had already dug the grave. He arrived just after midnight. The park was silent. Fog hung low over the trees. He parked, opened the trunk, and carried Joanna's body through the underbrush. He lowered her into the grave, covered her with soil, and packed it down. No ceremony, no remorse. He drove home, disposed of the hammer and plastic, and went to bed. November 1st, 2010, the morning after Halloween. The streets were littered with candy wrappers and deflated decorations. But inside Joanna Simpson's home, something was wrong. She hadn't called her friends. She hadn't responded to texts. She hadn't shown up for a scheduled appointment. Her car was still parked outside. Her phone was silent. Her children, still too young to understand, had spent the night with their father, unaware that their mother was already buried beneath the soil of Windsor Great Park. Joanna's close friends were the first to raise the alarm. They knew her routines. They knew she wouldn't vanish without a word. They called the police. The initial response was cautious. Adults go missing. Sometimes they need space. But the officers who arrived sensed something off. The house was too clean, too quiet, and Robert Brown's demeanor was rehearsed. He told them Joanna had left, that she was overwhelmed, that she needed time. But his story had holes. Her purse was still in the house, her keys, her phone, her car, and Brown's eyes, cold, detached, didn't match the concern of a worried ex-husband. The police began to dig deeper. Detectives from Thames Valley Police took over the case. They began with the basics: phone records, CCTV footage, interviews with neighbors. Brown's timeline didn't hold. His alibi was vague. And then came the forensic sweep. In the garage, they found traces of blood, small but telling, on the floor, on the plastic sheeting, in the trunk of Brown's car. DNA confirmed it. Joanna Simpson had bled there. Brown was arrested. Under questioning, he didn't deny the killing, but he didn't call it murder. He claimed he had snapped, that the divorce had pushed him over the edge, that he had suffered a psychological breakdown. His lawyers prepared a defense: manslaughter by diminished responsibility. But the evidence told a different story. Police uncovered maps of Windsor Great Park on Brown's computer. They found receipts for the hammer, the plastic, the gloves. They found a shovel in his garage, with soil matching the burial site. This wasn't a breakdown. It was premeditation. Still, the legal system had its own rules. Robert Brown's trial began in 2011 at Reading Crown Court. The prosecution laid out a chilling case: premeditated murder, executed with precision. They presented forensic evidence: blood traces in the garage, plastic sheeting, the claw hammer, the grave in Windsor Great Park. They showed Brown's internet searches, his purchase history, and the timeline that proved intent. But Brown's defense team had a different strategy. They argued that Brown suffered from an adjustment disorder triggered by the emotional stress of the divorce and custody battle. They claimed he had snapped. that the killing wasn't planned, but a moment of psychological collapse. Psychiatric experts were called. They testified that Brown's mental state was fragile, that he had lost touch with reality. Joanna's family sat in the courtroom, stunned. They had seen the signs. They had heard Joanna's fears. They knew Brown wasn't broken. He was calculating. But the jury accepted the plea. Brown was convicted of manslaughter by diminished responsibility, not murder. He was sentenced to 26 years in prison, with eligibility for automatic release after 13 years. The courtroom was silent. Joanna's mother wept. Her friends stared in disbelief. The man who had planned her death, buried her in a park, and lied to police would walk free in just over a decade. Justice, they felt, had been diluted. Joanna Simpson's mother, Diana Parks, didn't retreat into silence after the trial. She stepped into the public eye with a mission: to stop Robert Brown from walking free. She had watched the trial unfold with disbelief. The man who had murdered her daughter with a claw hammer, buried her in a pre-dug grave, and lied to police, was now being treated as a victim of mental instability. Diana didn't buy it. She knew Brown. She had seen the control, the manipulation, the cold calculation. This wasn't a breakdown, it was execution. In the years that followed, Diana launched a campaign to block Brown's automatic release. She spoke to newspapers, appeared on television, and met with lawmakers. Her message was clear: he is dangerous. He should not be released. Joanna's friends joined the fight. They described her as warm, intelligent, and deeply protective of her children. They shared stories of her fear, how she had confided that Brown was unpredictable, how she had taken steps to protect herself. But the system hadn't listened. The campaign gained traction. Public figures voiced support. Domestic violence advocates rallied behind the cause. The case became a symbol, not just of one woman's murder, but of a legal system that too often failed to protect victims from calculated killers. Meanwhile, Brown remained in prison, silent, detached. His release date loomed: 2023, 13 years after the murder. Diana pushed harder. She petitioned the Ministry of Justice. She demanded a review. She warned that Brown's release would not only dishonor Joanna's memory, but endanger others. The fight wasn't just legal. It was emotional. It was forensic. It was personal. Years passed, but the silence left by Joanna Simpson's murder never faded. Her children, once too young to understand, grew up in the shadow of a tragedy that reshaped their lives. They were raised without their mother's warmth, her guidance, her laughter. And though they were shielded from the details early on, the truth eventually found them. Joanna's friends remained close to the children, helping them navigate birthdays, school milestones, and holidays that felt incomplete. Her mother, Diana Parks, became a pillar, not just of grief, but of resilience. She spoke often of Joanna's kindness, her intelligence, her fierce love for her children. She made sure Joanna's name was never reduced to a headline or a statistic. In Windsor, the community still remembered. The house where Joanna lived became a quiet landmark of loss. Neighbors recalled her smile, her generosity, the way she always made time for others. The park where she was buried, Windsor Great Park, became a place of reflection. Some locals left flowers. Others walked the trails in silence, knowing what lay beneath. Joanna's story began to echo beyond Windsor. Her case was cited in domestic violence forums, legal reform debates, and true crime documentaries. Her name became a symbol of the system's blind spots, of how calculated killers could manipulate psychiatric defenses and escape full accountability. But her legacy wasn't just legal, it was human. Her children, now young adults, carried her memory forward. They spoke of her with reverence. They pursued education, friendships, and healing. And though the wound remained, they refused to let it define them. Joanna's voice, silenced on Halloween night, was now carried by those who loved her. In every petition, every interview, every campaign to block Robert Brown's release, her presence was felt. She had been shattered, but she was never erased. 13 years after Joanna Simpson was murdered, the silence surrounding her case was shattered again, not by violence, but by bureaucracy. Robert Brown, now in his mid-60s, was scheduled for automatic release under UK sentencing guidelines. The law allowed prisoners convicted of manslaughter to be released halfway through their sentence, regardless of the brutality of the crime. Brown had served his time. The system said he was free to go. Joanna's family was horrified. Diana Parks, now in her 80s, intensified her campaign. She met with government officials, appeared on national television, and pleaded with the Ministry of Justice to intervene. He planned it. He buried her. He lied. And now he walks free? She asked, her voice trembling but resolute. The public rallied behind her. Petitions surged. Domestic violence advocates demanded reform. The case became a flashpoint in the debate over sentencing laws, mental health defenses, and victim protection. But the law was rigid. Unless the Justice Secretary intervened personally, Brown would be released. In late 2023, the Ministry of Justice announced a review. The decision hung in the balance. Joanna's children, now adults, waited in quiet agony. They had lived their lives under the shadow of a man who had taken everything from them, and now he might walk among them again. The silence that followed Joanna's murder had never truly ended. It lingered in courtrooms, in legal loopholes, in the quiet grief of her family. But her story, once buried in Windsor Great Park, was now a rallying cry. Justice, they argued, wasn't just about punishment. It was about recognition, about truth, about ensuring that silence never again becomes a shield for violence.